Today we are going to discuss about the disaster management plan. So disaster means any unplanned event, and that unplanned event will be causing either death or significant injuries to, if it is occurring in a workplace, it is causing to employees, customers or public. So actually this is a situation where people are in a helpless condition or people are in a suffering situation. So as a result of this helpless or suffering situation, people may need protection, clothing, shelter, medical, social care, etc. There are two groups of disasters. Disasters can be broadly classified into two groups. They are natural disasters and man-made disasters. Whether it is man-made or natural, the disaster, if occurring, will require the management of disaster so that the post-disaster phase life is back to normal condition. So even if the disaster is at the local level, national level or international level, for the rescue and relief of the victims, they call for immediate action. So a management plan need to be drafted for this particular condition. So what is meant by a disaster management plan? What is the objective of disaster management plan? Disaster management plan means it is the process of preparing for the mitigating measures. Once a disaster has occurred, it need to be mitigated from the effects of that disaster. So a proper planning is required. So the draft prepared for the preparation for mitigating measures, you call it as the disaster management plan. So the DMP, disaster management plan, aims at ensuring safety of life, protection of environment, protection of installation, restoration of production. If a disaster management plan need to be implemented effectively, a wide circulation of the DMP and proper training of the people should be provided through rehearsals or drills. So the disaster management plan should be reflecting the consequences of the undesired event due to deteriorating conditions or knock-on effects. So after a disaster, the entire area will be in a deteriorating condition. So what are the probable consequences due to this condition that need to be reflected in the disaster management plan? And also the management should be able to demonstrate the assessment of consequences. The assessment of consequences need to be demonstrated with the help of supporting evidences. And it should be based on the available and reliable information, accident data from internal and external sources, and also the reports of other outside necessary agencies need to be incorporated in the preparation of a disaster management plan. So these are the different objectives of disaster management plan. First one is the medical treatment of casualties and rescue need to be ensured. Then other people, those people who are not directly victimized to the particular disaster, they also need to be safeguarded from the ill effects of this particular disaster. So safeguarding all the people should be one important objective of the disaster management plan. Next one is the damage occurring to. I told that in the case of disasters, the damage will be occurring to life, property, as well as the environment. So all these damages should be minimized. Whether the damage is occurring to life, property, or environment, all these things need to be minimized by a disaster management plan, by the effective implementation of a disaster management plan. Then the incident need to be brought into control. It need to be controlled and contained. Next one is media has got a very important role. Media has got a very important role in the disaster management. So actually the role of media lies in providing accurate information to the public so that the public is not in a situation of panic. Public should not be in a panic situation, and also if required, public should be willing to provide their services as volunteers in the disaster mitigation operation. So the role of media is to broadcast the information to public so that their panic level is reduced as well as their maximum participation is ensured. So in order to ensure this, authoritative information need to be provided to the news media. So the disaster management plan should consider that aspect also, whereby authoritative information will be provided to the media. Next one, the affected area need to be rehabilitated safely. So securing the safe rehabilitation of the affected area is required. Next one, the operational efficiency of rescue, rehabilitation, and medical help and restoring the normalcy need to be ensured. So these are the different objectives of the disaster management plan. Emergency planning means for protection of plant, personnel, and people in nearby areas, and also the protection of environment in case of a unplanned hazardous event. So it should be enacting in a very rapid way. There should be a quick response for this such type of unplanned disasters. So these kind of emergency situations can be like arising from the leakage of certain substances, explosions, chemical storage, handling, fire. These are the different situations where an emergency rapid action will be the need of the hour. So there are different examples for furnace hazard. Consider a situation where an industrial disaster has occurred due to a hazard in a furnace. So what are the different safety measures to be ensured? This is only an example. So what we have to do is, I'm giving you an example of furnace hazard. You have to think about the different hazards that may be occurring and what will be the different mitigative measures as part of these hazards. I will be uploading more PDF regarding this in your Google Classroom. So in case of a furnace hazard, the safety measures will be including, first of all, there should be an alarm. So an automatic alarm need to be installed. Then there should be a system for suppressing the explosion. There should be any means of shutting off the power and raw material supply. Then standard operating practices for starting the sequence of furnace. Piping, valves, and fitting should be metallic and be in accordance with the procedures. In case of fire and explosion, there are certain procedures to be followed if the disaster is outbreak of a fire or a sudden explosion. So in case of a fire or explosion, whatever is the cause of the fire or explosion, it should be made sure that there is no more explosion causing. So what is to be done? Eliminate all the sources of ignition. Okay, once there is a fire, we make sure that there is no chance of spreading this fire. So if there is any explosive materials, try to defuse it so that there is no more accident. If there is any moving part, it need to be identified and addressed for. Then fire extinguishers need to be actually for obtaining clearance before the starting of these plants and equipments, a fire clearance certificate is required, which makes sure that adequate number of fire extinguishers are provided. Then emergency and safety related equipments must be regularly checked and they need to be maintained to ensure their satisfactory working condition. First aid equipments, first aid and other equipment should be in working condition. Extinguishers need to be fitted at suitable location and they should be given with proper visual indication. On-site emergency plan. So an on-site emergency has taken place. That emergency may be due to hazardous installation. And in such a case, what is the next rapid step to be adopted? That is the main area of concern. So if people are held up in different locations, they need to be evacuated from that particular location. So an evacuation plan need to be prepared. Then ambulances, mobile hospital facilities, etc. need to be provided to the victimized people at the shortest time. So actually this requires a participation of government as well as private. Okay, even though the government machinery will be running due to different reasons, like the local people will be more aware about the geographical conditions of that particular area, about the demography, about the logistics of that particular area. So it ensures a coordinated activity of the government as well as the local people. Then emergency communication. So in case of an emergency situation, like a sudden outbreak of a fire, some gas leakage, etc., people need to be made aware about the situation without creating much panic. So here comes the objective of having a proper communication system. Then emergency responsibilities, that is not needed for us. So this is how we have to discuss about the disaster management plan. So who all are the people required in case of a emergency situation? A rescue and firefighting team is required. A medical team is required. Transportation and communication facilities are required. The emergency plan need to be updated accordingly. Okay, once you are sticking to an emergency plan, it should not be like it is a concrete plan and you cannot move out of that. As per the demands of the situation at the site itself, emergency plans need to be drafted at the earliest. Then mock drills need to be conducted for execution. So what are the general responsibilities of employees during an emergency? First of all, emergency control care, emergency control center need to be maintained. There should be an assembly point. In case of an emergency, there should be a predefined area where the people will be assembling themselves and discussing about the rapid plans to be drafted in order to make sure that there is no severity due to this particular accident. Then health support systems like breathing apparatus, essential medical facilities, oxygen cylinders, all these things need to be ensured. Actually, about speaking about this disaster management plan is very easy nowadays, because in the newspapers and media, you're already seeing about the difficulties caused due to this COVID disaster, right? It was an unplanned situation. And right now we are facing difficulty of oxygen cylinders and hospital facilities. Even there is problem for cremating the dead bodies. So what is done? So these things can be included in what you study. Okay. So I'll be sharing this PDF. You can read those things again, and I'll be sharing more PDF regarding this.